Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for High Noon. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm a professor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator of this conversation. We are pleased to be joined by the director of High Noon, Ivan Mazza. Hello, Ivan, and welcome.
Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Hello, everybody. How are you? Nice to be here. Very honored.
Well, thank you, Ivan, for that greeting, and especially our Spanish-speaking students appreciated that greeting as well. Let's get right into High Noon, popular American Western starring Gary Cooper back in the 50s. Did you get any inspiration from that classic Western to make this film?
Well, actually, yes. I use the title as an inspiration because there was a tricky translation of the title to Spanish. It's very difficult to translate High Noon to Spanish. So in the Spanish world, this film was called something like The Appointed Time. Okay, so the original title of High Noon in Spanish is The Appointed Time. So I decided when we chose a title in English to use High Noon, like the reverse process. And as an inspiration, yeah, I use the spaghetti westerns, classic westerns, obviously, because of the visual treatment.
Well, but for this particular film, you chose to use children instead of adults. Why did you choose to do a school scene as opposed to using adults for this film?
Because the original idea was based on a memory, on something that I think no, it really happened to me with some changes. It was a school-based story. It has to do a little bit with innocence and with the peer pressure. I don't think I could translate this story to adults. But that was a big challenge. For me, the scariest thing about this short film was to work with children because it's not such an easy task, you know?
Oh, it's definitely not, especially working with the children. You have to work around their schedules and schooling and so forth. So let's talk a little bit about the production itself. Where did you find these children? Did you know them? Did you hold auditions? How did you find them?
We held auditions. This film was filmed in Venezuela. Yes, we held auditions, but the funny thing is that we held several days, but the two protagonists were the first choice. The first two kids that came to audition for those roles were in the end the ones that were chosen.
Yeah, they did a really good job acting in the film. And the rest of the children, did they audition, or were those the ones that didn't you didn't cast for the main roles?
No, everybody was auditioned. Basically, the two protagonists and every protagonist has like a couple of henchmen, you know, on each side, and those two were also cast in each side. Those six kids were the kids with whom we worked the most. You know, the rest were like extras. I don't know if that's the correct word. You know, but everything was taken care of. You know, we try to have a very balanced and representative class of group of people of how is a class in this Latin American place. You know.
And the location of the set location, did you actually use a school building, or did you create a
Well,
set for this?
we use a couple of buildings. The location is strict. It's actually three locations. It was one for the bathroom, in which they have this little face of it. Then one for one of the hallways, and the rest was in an old university in the city of Caracas. None of them was actually a school.
Oh, that was you did a really good job of the set design to convince it that it was a school, but you actually used a school bus for the last scene, I take it.
Yeah, that was a real school bus. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, very good. With that, um, let's talk about the actual story itself. These two boys actually had a conflict, and this something that goes on in all schools all across the world. There's always conflicts amongst young people, and sometimes they escalate a little more. And so you said you had this was like a memory from childhood in which you were trying to express that this actually happened to you, or did you see this happen?
No, this happened to me. It was when I was a kid in Uruguay, the southern part of South America, and I was because of an accident in the schoolyard. Suddenly, I bump into somebody, and everybody around started to say, "Okay, this is a fight. You will have to fight." And this kid was kind of my friend. He was sitting next to me in class, and I was really feeling the pressure of, oh, I will have to fight him because I bump into him. And the other kid was kind of feeling the same. And in the end, I have to confess that I escaped that day because everybody was like waiting outside, and I escaped. Uh, and I remember many years ago, I had already filmed a couple of projects. Totally different projects. This memory, I thought it was very cinematic, and I think it was an interesting story, and it was a good thing to explore. Like this thing about peer pressures. How many times in life we are not true to ourselves because in the end you say, are they cowards or are they brave? Because if you think, oh, both of them run away, they are cowards. But both of them, in the end, they decided to do what they felt instead of just bowing to the pressure of their peers. So that was kind of, I think, the interesting thing about this story for me.
That is interesting. Well, let's back up a little bit. You said you escaped in your story.
Yeah.
Well, what happened the next day with you?
You know what? I actually don't remember, but nothing happened. No, no, no. Because if something had happened, I would remember it for sure. This was like many, many years ago. I don't remember more than maybe somebody calling you coward or something like that. But these things, maybe there was another fight of somebody else the other day, because this is the how these things work in these primary schools.
Exactly. So, the ages of the boys, were they around 12 years old? Is that the
No,
age
they
you were
were
trying to depict?
the kids, the original kids. You mean the actors?
The,
Uh,
in the story, do you wanted them to
yeah,
be
in the
about
story, they
12,
were around 9 and 10 year olds.
9,
They
10?
were
Okay.
younger. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the big boy, the bigger one, he was younger. I think he was 9 years old or something like that. But he was so big that he looked like he was older.
He did. Wow.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So when the film was completed, well, first of all, how long did it take for you to days of shooting, and also how long did it take for you to complete the entire film?
This film was kind of a test I self-imposed on me and my business partner in the production company, trying to not to spend so much time on it, trying to do it in our best possible way, but to create a good workflow, in the production, post-production, the filming. The shooting took 4 days. The post-production, the editing and everything took less than 2 months. I think it was 6 weeks or 7 weeks, because this film was funded by the National Film Institute of Venezuela, and they give you certain deadlines. And it was funny because when we delivered the film, they were totally in shock. It's like, what? Do you already have the film? And I was like, yes, it's here. No, it's not possible. Everybody takes like longer. And I said, no, no, no. We did it because we had everything very well planned, and luckily we could we could follow our own times. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly, but to keep our own pace.
It's exactly a lot of pre-production work to actually make the production happen rather quickly. I just
Mhm.
want to let everyone know we're talking to the director of High Noon, Ivan Mazza. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal and we'll get to them as time allows. And And one question I do have is the ending of the film. The two boys are on the bus. What did you want us to conclude with the ending? Did they make up? Did you want us to just think of something on our own? What do you want to? What did you want the viewers to think?
I don't think it would be fair for me to say what I want you to think about the ending of the film. I think I left it a little bit open in order to generate that conversation. And that's something I always like to do in my different projects. It's not like a big open ending, but in that it's open enough so you can go and talk with somebody else like, oh, what do you think is going to happen? Are they going to be friends or not? In a way, they accepted the situation, but I don't know. I prefer not to tell that, you know?
Okay, so since you prefer not to tell, you've shown this film lots of times. What has the
Mhm.
reaction generally been? What have people said about the film?
Usually it's a very warm reaction. This film did very well around the world in film festivals, and usually people tell me good things about it. I don't feel very comfortable telling you this because it sounds like, you know, like, oh, I did such a good film. But actually, for example, I remember teachers telling me that they felt that the class really felt like a class, that sometimes when they're watching, sorry, a film which is with kids in a class, they feel that the behavior of the kids is weird, that kids really don't behave like that in class. For example, I remember that being praised, and then technical things like, oh, the music or the cinematography, and it's usually the welcoming was very warm, and I'm very happy about it.
Oh, good, good. We do have one question that's come in. It's a part comment and part question. This person
Mhm.
says, "I really like the film. I think at the end the boys became friends because nobody was around to see them. Do you use this film in schools to help prevent bullying?" So I
Well,
guess that.
it was used. So thank you for the question, first of all, and thank you for your the opinion of this person who sent the question. Yeah, it's been used for that in several instances. You know, even in some universities, they have asked me to use the short film to prevent bullying. And you know, something interesting is that there was a moment in the country of origin in Venezuela in which the National Film Institute started to enforce a law which wasn't enforced. That was that there was the obligation of playing national short films before feature films. If you went to the cinema, when they started this initiative, the first short film they showed was this one, and this film was playing actually in all the theaters in the country for 2 months. And I got a lot of good reception because of that. And a lot of people were talking about that it was could be used for helping prevent bullying and these problems, these school problems, right?
That's exactly with that. So it's good. This film is like a nice instrument to help open up discussion. Another question that's come in. It says, in the original High Noon, there were women in the film. Why did you choose not to have women in this film or girls in this film?
Well, there are girls. There's a teacher. There are girls around. But it was a my story was the fight. I wrote it from my point of view, right? So my point of view is it's a very personal film. I maybe if I had been a girl, I would have written a different thing. But um, there wasn't something deliberately done. It was like this story of this fight of this thing that happened a long time ago. Um, I don't know how else to answer to this. There's not a purposeful thing, you know.
Right, exactly. And if you did, it would have been forced. I mean, it could have been a little cheesy having the girl saying,
In my generation, in the place where I went to school, girls didn't used to fight in school between them. Kids, boys used to fight. That's based on personal experience. So it's a retelling of something that happened a long time ago, and I think it continue happening for many generations. I still believe this happens nowadays. So sadly, but that's why I think the answer to this question is that it's based on a personal experience, which was like that, basically.
Right. Yeah, it does, to tell it personally and to try to, put something in there that's not personal can kind of make the story seem fake, but this seemed, very
Exactly,
real.
exactly,
It
exactly,
did.
Eric. That's how I feel regarding these things.
Good. Those are good questions, students. Keep them coming in. In terms of working with the actors, the boys themselves, can you talk a little bit about that experience in working with them? Did you have to like coach them a lot? Did they really get it right away? How can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a different way, totally different approach to working with adults. Um, they knew the story, they understood it, they read the script, but we took these 6 kids I mentioned before, and we did a special work with them. Like, I don't know, did you notice? Obviously, you noticed the teacher, right? The teacher in class. She's a very, very famous Venezuelan actress that which whom I have worked before, and she had a lot of experience with as an acting coach, and she appears in the short film as a kind of cameo, you know. So I worked with her and these kids. We did some dynamics to feel confident around me and herself, to understand the screenplay, to understand the situations, but we never rehearsed the scenes to the detail. Never, because the big risk there is you lose this spark that kids have. They do it the first time and it's perfect. And if you ask them to repeat, it could be great, but it's not going to be like the first one, the first time, right? So it was a strange approach. It was like rehearsing very vague situations and playing a lot. During 3 weeks, we got together 3 afternoons in which with these kids we were kind of getting comfortable with each other, like kind of on a gym, playing games and doing practicing faces. For example, the big kid Pedro, he had some problems to have this neutral face, because I needed him to have this face that could be interpreted as aggressive or maybe scared if you watch the film twice. We had to create like games. For example, we started this game in which he had to put a blank face. And I remember while we were shooting, like telling him this trick we had, that it was like blank face, Pedro, blank face, remember blank face. And he was like, well, the blank face we had rehearsed. But other than that, we never went to the details of every scene, and I think that's the key for not losing naturalism with the kids. I don't know if that's the correct word, to be natural. We didn't, not to lose that.
Right, it's exactly, and that really showed because it seemed real. It seemed like the students were real students and they knew each other, and just by
Mm-hmm.
their mannerisms and gestures, and they're being comfortable. They didn't seem robotic. In a lot of films, you can see that, but this film you did not see that. We're almost out of time. I want to get this one last question that's coming. We get this a lot. Do you have any plans to make this into a sequel, into a feature?
No, not actually. I think this story is enough. I think this story tells the story. I think that to make this into a feature would be maybe to force it. I think it was perfect as a short film, as a way to tell this story. It's not on the plans. There are other plans for other projects, but not to expand this one. I think this should be left alone.
I definitely agree. It should be. Before I let you go, can
Mhm.
you give us a sneak peek about what you're working on next? What can we expect to see from you in the near future?
Well, I've been working in a couple of projects. In two different countries. I'm not living in Venezuela anymore. I'm living in Spain, and I'm by moving countries that kind of slows down everything. You know, I've been one of them is supposed to be set in. Both of them are going to be set in Latin America. One in Uruguay, which is a very special and weird little South American country because it doesn't look like a South American country, and people there have very different traditions and customs. It's a very European country. It's a kind of one of the projects is called Going Round, which is a dark comedy about one 120 something year old kid during one night in the capital city in Uruguay in the 90s. And the other one is a film with some fantastic undertones set in, luckily, one day in Caracas when things get better in that country. Um, about a man who suddenly discovers that he can do some special things, you know. It's very connected with other short films I did before. I explore a lot the idea of fantastic, very connected with harsh realities. None of my two projects is similar to High Noon in this moment.
Okay, quite different. We look forward to seeing that. Are we going to see that soon, the next year, a couple of years, or?
I don't know. If we are lucky, maybe in a couple of years we can see one of them. I hope. We are working on that. It's a different year. It's a difficult year. This one for cinema, developing cinema, and everything, and
Oh,
for the things, of course.
well, absolutely, yes. It has been a challenging year, but the effort that you put into High Noon and the effort you put into these projects, I'm sure we're in for a treat. Well, Ivan, Mazza, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate your insight into your film High Noon. Can you say a special goodbye to our Spanish language students?
Oh, of course, of course. Okay, thanks for everything. First to you, and now I'm going to say goodbye in Spanish. Muchas gracias a todos por escucharme, por estar ahí y porque les haya gustado el cortometraje. Thanks to everybody for being there, for asking these questions, and for liking the short film.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that special goodbye and your time. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about the upcoming 45th Cleveland International Film Festival, please continue to follow CIFF on social media or visit clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.